Nice to be here in Goloka Dhama, together with all of you, and to have the darshan of Shri Radha Madan Mohan again after some years. And especially right now, from where I'm sitting, having the darshan of Chota Radha Krishna, who hold a special place in my heart, because they are the first deities I ever had darshan. Shri Chota Radha Krishna Ki Jai. Indeed, this is our subject today. Ma Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Gaurani Acharya Yeshashunari Vasyatane Shatari Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaishanam Bhavaneyo Vaishnaveyo Krishna
Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye
Jaya
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
So I was asked to speak something related to Krishna Katha, something that will perhaps be related to our wonderful festival, special anticipation of the appearance of Lord Krishna, and thinking about where this is happening, remembering little Chota Radha Krishna, and also Shri Radha. I thought, let me try to say something on this subject of deities and deity worship. So, I've done this sometimes in the past, but it's actually been a while. So I feel a little bit rusty on the subject. I had to really sit down and think, okay, what am I going to talk about here? But all right. As we heard with the water reservoirs of the ears, how does the analogy go? It will feed my dry tongue, my desert-like tongue. So with your kind. Again, about something which you thought you'd already thought a lot about. Now we're going to kind of go, okay, start over, we're going to rethink. Think it again. So my suggestion is that we rethink our engagement or our lack of engagement with the deity of Krishna, Archa Vigraha. For some of us, we may be more engaged, some of us we may be less engaged, but however much we are, it's certainly, in a sense, it's an important principle that we reflect on what it is that we're doing, or what it is that we're not doing, and perhaps if we're not doing so much in the way of Archana, we might reflect on how we might do something more. And this brings us to my second objective, which is a completely 108% selfish objective, and that is to promote this book. So here comes the commercial. In television, you know, you're watching some interesting show and then suddenly it interrupts and then you have to watch them advertise something silly. So hopefully this is not something silly, but it's something some of you know about already and others may not, and some of you may have known that the book is available but only in hardbound and therefore astronomically expensive. So what's interesting now is that the book is available in paperback and it's, relatively speaking, very inexpensive. The book is called Attending Krishna's Image, Chaitanya Vaishnava Murti Seva as Devotional Truth, a fancy, again, quasi-academic title, but don't be frightened. It's just a fancy title. And the subject is our subject. This is our home territory. It's I'll be explaining something more about the book as we go along. One of the reasons I wrote the book was for devotees. Although I was doing it as an academic exercise, and therefore had to and also wanted to address a so-called learned audience, how to present, how to articulate this wonderful tradition we have of deity worship, temple worship, to a wider audience for whom all of this is pretty strange and possibly even threatening in the sense of being considered not religious. Maybe it's idolatry. So that's one of the subjects I want to address. In fact, I want to talk about today. Although I have to say, that's not something I addressed directly in this book. That was in the previous book, which used to be available. I think it's still available, called Krishna Statement. Yeah, is that still around? Yeah. Then it's still around. Yes. But I want to begin with just sharing a little bit of my memory of meeting Chota Radha Krishna. This is, we jump back to the year 1972. I know, it means this guy is really old. I'd like to reach it up more, but it's too far down. Okay. 1972, June, late June. The scene is, well, the preliminary scene is Stuttgart, Deutschland. We just drove by Stuttgart last night. And I was remembering nice memories of Stuttgart. My first 2 weeks in the Hare Krishna movement, there were no deities there. There was a nice Panchatattva picture, altar. We used to sing every morning, Gurvashtaka, all 6 of us, 6 brahmacharis. And then the news came, Srila Prabhupada is coming to Paris. This was, you can just drop everything. Prabhupada's coming to Paris, we're going to Paris. And so, first we all headed up north to Hamburg, which I don't really remember now what the reasoning was, but I'm glad that we did. The sort of main temple in Germany at that time was in a warehouse in, what was the place? Bartelstrasse?
Okay, number 65.
Bartelstrasse number
65.
65. And Vaidyanatha Prabhu was there.
Yeah, I joined the same year, yes, in 72. And when the devotees drove to Paris, I came along with them to see Srila Prabhupada.
So
I
it
saw
was the
you.
same time?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so I just remember we came in this unlikely place for a temple, went upstairs, came into the temple room, and the temple room, whoa, it was such a revelation. They had converted the window to make it like colored glass. I think they just took some colored plastic or some paint or whatever, in a sort of makeshift way. And But then the altar, on the altar were Chota Radha Krishna and Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, Chota Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, the deities of who are now in, I believe they're still in Zurich. Zurich Temple. They're the small deities of the Zurich Temple. So those Radha Madan Mohan came later. They came to Schloss Rettershof in which year?
74.
74. So were they already there when Srila Prabhupada visited?
Yeah, Hamsadutta saw them in Paris. Bhagavan had ordered deities,
And he
Hamsadutta
stole
saw
them.
in 73, I think, he saw them. I'm not sure whether that was already in 72.
Okay. Yeah, they're actually, as I remember, more or less stolen. They were intended for Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our illustrious leader at the time decided, no, they're coming to Germany. And so, anyway, before that, so in Hamburg, and the pujaris were doing very beautiful worship. And this was the thing that really struck me and gave me a kind of, some sort of additional positive jolt toward, just surrendering. In fact, I think it was that evening, after I saw the deities, and I saw the pujaris, I just remember Smita Krishna Swami, at that time, Smita Krishna, that's Brahmachari, doing the arati, with such concentration. I mean, it was like electric current. He seemed to be so focused, and he was making these slow and graceful motions, weighing the items in the arati. And then I once peeked into the kitchen, and in the kitchen there was this intense mood. There was Ashtaratha Prabhu, and I think Bhakti Vaibhava Swami was there. He was Brahmachari at the time. And possibly Mother Himalati was there. And they were just getting an offering ready. Again, such intense concentration. It was like in a hospital operation room. Everyone was very serious and very concentrated. Wow. This is worship of Krishna. This is part of. So then that evening, a few of us were sitting around in one room, and our GVC at that time, Matsududa Prabhu, was there and chatting. We were anticipating leaving the next day for Paris, and he was. Some of us were brand new. I mean, I was brand new. He was just going around the room and sort of one after another asking us, "Do you want to be initiated?" Yeah. "Do you want to be initiated?" Sure. And so it went like that. And because I'd seen the deities and I'd seen the deity worship and I'd seen this colored glass temple and smelled the incense and heard the bell ringing and heard some mantras, and maybe by that time I'd also had a little bit of prasadam, when he pointed to me and said, "Do you want to be initiated?" I said, "Yeah." It's for me. I don't know much what's going on, but yeah, I think this is what I'm looking for. So, what I thought I'll do, we'll see whether I actually follow my plans, right? You want to make Krishna laugh, tell him your plans. But my idea is that today we'll talk about what the Murti, the deity of Krishna, is not, and what worship of the deity, the Archa, Vigraha, the Murti, is not. And then tomorrow we'll talk about what the deity, what the Murti is, and what worship is. And then on Janmashtami morning, my title is Krishna Worship as a Daily Dramatic Celebration. Yeah, sometimes it's dramatic because who's doing the offering? Someone's running, waking up and feeling late. Okay, that's a different sort of drama than I had in mind, but happy to come in as well. I don't necessarily want to do all the talking. We might want to have some discussions, some questions. Usually at some point, someone will ask, can we offer X, Y, or Z to the deity? And then it goes into that kind of discussion. He would walk, but he would walk behind him without being seen. If the young Brahmin would turn around, he would stop walking. Apparently he's a large deity. I understand that Westerners are not allowed into the temple, so Madhavananda Prabhu, you're nodding that he's a large deity.
It's about 6 feet high.
6 feet high. You
Prabhupada
snuck
went
in.
inside with a group of Western disciples
Oh, okay.
when he was there. But since then they don't allow. You can see him from the doorway.
Okay.
So,
Get a little peek.
you know,
Yeah, so he's a large deity. So in other words, it wouldn't be that he wouldn't be small enough that someone could carry him. This is how he proved the words of the Brahmana, because he was willing to walk all this distance in this way. And he must have walked. Okay, so it must be all true what the young Brahmana is saying. So the point here is that he's saying you are not a statue, or we might say you are not merely a statue. Because one might say, well, but he's a statue. I mean, after all, the deity is made of marble, the deity is made of wood or metal or whatever. Who can deny? It's a physical image, and there he is, like any other physical image. How can you say you are not, or he is not, a statue? Ultimately, this is all going to boil down to the same point that Madhavananda Prabhu was making about bhakti, which is that when there is bhakti, we can see Krishna, and when there's no bhakti, then we can't see Krishna. So without bhakti, we're only going to see a statue. And with bhakti, we can see that indeed this is Krishna. And the point I want to add to this is that how did Srila Prabhupada translate the word bhakti? Did he say devotion, or did he say service, or did he say devotional service? He almost always, he used these two words together, devotional service. There's a kind of magical ring, I think, to what's really a profound insight that Srila Prabhupada had, that bhakti is not just what generally people would say in India it is devotion. Oh yes, I am having so much bhakti. Great. Prabhu, could you do some service? No, I am having too much bhakti. So, bhakti means devotional service, and it is through devotional service that we realize that the deity is not just a statue. Okay, but so we're talking about what the deity is not, and so I want to get into this subject, which is, in a sense, for many people, the elephant in the room. We have this expression in English, there's an elephant in the room, meaning there's some big issue sort of hanging over the whole subject. And that issue is, from the perspective of Western culture, the Abrahamic traditions, by which I mean Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of them are extremely concerned about something called idolatry as being strictly forbidden. But before we do that, let's think for just a bit about the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and what I would say is a concern that Krishnadas Kaviraj has in his composing the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It seems to me that he is very concerned, and we can't really know exactly if he saw some problem in Vrindavan at the time that he was writing, which was the early 17th century. But it's almost as if that's the case. He wants to remind us again and again, so many ways, that the deity is not a statue. And he does this in a variety of ways, usually in relation to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and something he does or something he says. So, I want you to help me right now. Let's think of a few examples of how this comes out in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yes?
Lord Chaitanya faints in front of Jagannath.
Lord Chaitanya faints in front of Lord Jagannath. Why would he faint in front of Lord Jagannath if Jagannath were just a statue, right? Yes, good. Anything else? Yes?
Madhav the poet finds Gopal.
He fights? Oh, he finds. Yes, he doesn't fight, does he? He finds Gopal, yes. The finding of Gopal deity by Madhavendra Puri. Yes. Finding of deities, that's a subject Lord Chaitanya sends devotees to Vrindavan to find holy places, and they also find deities. Others? Yes?
Madhavendra Puri and Tirachora Gopinath.
Tirachora Gopinath story, yes. We hear about that as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is on his way to Puri. They make a stop in Remuna, and there they hear how it is that Tirachora Gopinath becomes known as Tirachora Gopinath. We heard about the Lord as a thief. We sang a wonderful song, how the Lord is a thief. So the deity can also be a thief. Yeah. There's so many pastimes of the Lord and his associates in relation to deities, but I wanted to focus specifically on Chaitanya Charitamrita because I think right there Krishnadas is very concerned that everyone understand that there is Lord Chaitanya, we worship Lord Chaitanya, and we worship Krishna in the temple. What about in the very beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita? Who are prayed to in the very beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Abentheuer is praying to Srimati.
Yes, that's a little later. I'm thinking of the very beginning. First few verses, first 14 verses, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj is the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thank you very much for reminding us.
Praying to the spiritual masters.
Yes, he prays the spiritual masters, and after that he glorifies Lord Chaitanya, and then Radha Madan Mohan and Govindaji and Gopinath. He's not just praising some deities out there somewhere floating around. He's praising deity or forms of the Lord. He's praising specific deities in Vrindavan. These deities were there in Vrindavan as Krishnadas was writing his Chaitanya Charitamrita. All right, so there is this idea of idolatry or idol worship. And what I will do is, for some of you this might be a review because you might have read something that I've written on this subject, but what I did a few years back when I was writing my master's thesis was to study, okay, the Abrahamic traditions say that idolatry is a terrible, terrible thing. So what exactly do they mean by idolatry? What is it that they're talking about? And so I found one scholar who had written a whole book on this subject from the perspective of the Jewish tradition. Because the Jewish tradition is the oldest of the three Abrahamic traditions, I thought it's good to start there. So he analyzes that there are 5 types of idolatry. Now I know it's starting to get a little bit academic at this point. Some of you are sort of, okay, I thought we were going to get some nice Krishna Katha. Sorry, but we need this. This is part of the medicine. I'll try to make it as sweet as possible. Okay, so the first, bear with me. We're now going to ancient Israel, and I know there's a lot of trouble in that part of the world these days, but there's been a lot of trouble there since at least 2,000 years, maybe more, 3,000 years. And maybe this is part of the trouble. Okay, stop. That's another subject. The first idea, the first sort of idolatry that they speak of is betrayal. To betray someone is to not be faithful to that person. And in the ancient Jewish tradition, the idea is that the nation of Israel is the bride of God. And he is wedded to the bride of, to God, the groom. So they have this kind of imagery. And much of the Hebrew Bible, or what the Christians call the Old Testament, is about how the Israelites are deviating from their covenant to God. And it's that deviation from the covenant with God which is understood to be betrayal. And what sort of a betrayal is it? It's thought of as adultery. And adultery in ancient Israel was punishable by death. So this is a very serious crime. And it's been said that the entire Old Testament or Hebrew Bible is really about this subject. This is the main subject of the Old Testament, is don't be an idolater. Now what happens, the story is there in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, I think it's repeated. Moses, after he's brought all the Israelites out of Egypt, they go into the desert. And there they are in the desert, and Moses goes up on the mountain, and there he meets God in a burning bush, and he hears from God, and he hears commandments. But while he's gone, the people become impatient. And in their impatience, they decide to start worshiping an image. And the image is made by a person named Aaron. Aaron tells them, give me all your jewelry, all your gold ornament. You know, he tells the men, tell your wives to give me all their rings and whatever, and he puts them all together, and apparently he melts it all down. And he then makes some sort of image of a calf, a golden calf. It doesn't tell us how big this calf was, so how much gold they were carrying with them, I don't know. But. And then Moses eventually comes down the mountain. He's got these tablets with him, which have the Ten Commandments. And the second one says, thou shalt worship no other gods before me. Thou shalt make no graven images. And when he sees what they're doing, in anger, he throws down the tablets and smashes them. And he pleads with them. And God becomes so angry, he wants to destroy the whole race. But then Moses pleads with him, no, you've brought them out, give them another chance. So it's all very dramatic, and it's all on the subject of idolatry. Well, here we have something which now we might relate to our own tradition. And here something curious happens. We might find a sort of inversion, a sort of upside down, because we have the case in the Shikshashtaka of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The very last verse says what? Ashlishava pararatam vinashtumam adarshanam marmahatam karotu va yata tata va vidadatu lampato matprananadastu saevanahara. There's a very heavy word in this verse, and it's lampata. Lampata means devachi, someone who is unfaithful. And it's addressed directly to Krishna. Oh, you devachi. Oh, you unfaithful one. You may be unfaithful, the verse says, but I don't care. For me, you are always my worshipable Lord, whether you embrace me, whether you trample me underfoot, it doesn't matter to me. I will remain always mat prananatas. Mat prananatas tu saeva na apara. No one else, only you will remain my master, my nata. The master, the Lord of my life. So, if we think about betrayal, from the Jewish perspective, the bad guy is us. And if we think in relation to our understanding, the Vaishnava understanding, it's Krishna who may sometimes, quote unquote, betray the devotee. But of course, that betrayal is only apparently so. Because why? Because, as we heard, the devotee is imprisoning Krishna within his heart. He can't go anywhere because the devotee has captured Krishna in his heart, or her heart, so that he cannot leave. So there's really no question of betrayal. And yet there apparently is sometimes. I was just reading, and this is only the first of 5 types, and we'll stop for now. But I was just reading today a nice account in, again, Madhavananda Prabhu's nice journal about how one time Krishna takes sannyas, which is a subject that might sort of come up later in this festival. he takes he takes sannyas, taking advice from devotees because he's trying to find some way to convince Srimati Radharani to give up her righteous anger. And the point is that she is angry. Why? Because Krishna has been discovered with another woman, or apparently with another woman. And she is not going to give up her anger about this at all. And it goes on and on about how angry she was. So angry that she didn't want to see the color black again. She didn't want to see black clouds. She didn't want to see herself in a mirror with her black hair. She had the tamal tree that was in her courtyard uprooted and thrown away. Didn't want to see the Yamuna, not going to bathe in the Yamuna, not going to get water from the Yamuna. None of this. Forget it. No black. No talk about what to speak of talking about. Anyway, so Krishna had to take extreme methods in order to get Radharani to give up her anger. And his method was to come as a renunciant, as a Shaivite beggar, and to beg her for her anger. Please give me what I want. Promise me you'll give me what I want. She finally agrees, and he says, now, give me your anger. He says, okay. All right, so betrayal, this is one form of idolatry, which I would argue is not present in our worship of the deity. Shri Radha Madan Mohana ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
HH Krishna Kshetra Prabhu ki jai.